Welcome to the Cassidy top tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make this top. It does come in a full-length version and a cropped version in sizes extra small through 3XL, and you can purchase this whole set. The link is in my bio, or you can just purchase the top. This top is fully lined and does come boned, so it has a lot of structure and looks really nice on. We're going to take this really slowly, and if throughout the process you have any questions, please let me know and let's get started. So once you have printed out your pattern, you are just going to cut your fabric for your main fabric and your lining. This is my main fabric. You can see I have one front center, two front sides, two back sides, and two center backs. And the first thing we are going to do is add some interfacing to our main fabric. This is going to help give everything structure. I'm also using a light to mid-weight interfacing. So now that that's all done, you can see it looks like this. We are going to start sewing, and we're going to go side by side. This helps even everything out. So I'm going to start with my right side, and I'm going to take my center back and connect it to my side back. Once I've pinned this in place, I'm going to sew it down, and I'm going to do this with 0.5 inch seam allowance that is along the whole pattern. Once that's done, it will look like this, and we're going to follow those exact same steps. I'm going to take my side back and connect it to my side front. Last part for this side, I'm going to connect my side front to my center front. And then once this is done, I'm going to do the exact same thing, but on the opposite side in the same direction that we started. So I'm taking my center back and connecting it to my side back, sewing those down, and then once that's done, I'll repeat everything, and then we'll go side back to side front before we again connect this into the center front. By doing this in opposite ways, by doing side by side, it helps everything just even out in case you get off a little bit and then your top ends up lopsided. But once I have that side done, I'm going to connect everything at the center front so we have a full top. So here I'm connecting my last bit. I'm just doing that side front to the center front, and once we're done, it will look like this. So now you can see I have my top all sewn up and connected. I am just going to press everything down, and we're going to do this strategically. We're going to use our seam allowance to make the channels for our boning. So that center back, there is no boning, so it gets pressed flat. The side is going to get pressed away from the center front. The rest of your seams are all getting pressed away from the center front. You can see I've done that. For the side, I'm going to show you guys, and I'm also using a tailoring ham just to make sure everything's nice and neat. I'm going to show you this photo so you can see where your boning is going. So here's what your top should look like all laid out, and you can see our boning channels. We are going to have 4 of them, and they are in that side front and then also the side. This will actually be your side when you have the top on. So you can see I'm going to press that seam allowance away from the center front, and that's because we are going to sew those down, and that will be our channels for our 4 boning pieces. So pressing those away from the center front, and then the center back you can just press open so it is nice and neat, and it will look like this when you are finished. Here is my top. I'm going to set this main fabric piece aside for right now, and I'm going to repeat all of those steps for my lining. The only thing that will be different is I'm going to press all of the seam allowances flat, but basically all of those steps of how we created our top, we are just repeating it the exact same way for our lining piece. And then I'm going to put my lining piece away, and then I'm going to grab my main fabric once more. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew down that seam allowance for our main fabric. Again, we're just doing that for the 4 boning channels that were in the illustration. So I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and I'm going to make sure I'm leaving enough room for my boning. So you can see I have enough room. I'm going right at the very edge, sewing down that seam allowance. It should look like this on the inside and outside when you're done, and it's a little hard to see because my thread matches. But once that's done, I'm going to do that for all 4, and you can see I have those all sewn down. Once that's done, you're going to grab your boning, whatever you're using, and we are going to cut those with 3/4 of an inch from the top and 3/4 of an inch from the bottom. You want to make sure you have enough room when you put these in because we do still have to finish the top and the bottom. I also tape my ends off. This helps keep it from poking out. You can also burn the ends, however you choose to do that. And then I'm just going to insert my boning into each of these 4 channels. I'm going to repeat that step and measure 3/4 of an inch from the top and the bottom for my front pieces. I'm going to tape them off so I don't have to worry about them poking through when I wear the top, and I'm going to insert that into the channels. Now that we have a fully boned top, we are going to move on to attaching our lining. So you can see I have grabbed my lining. I'm going to place it right sides facing on top of my main fabric top, and I'm going to align all of those seams. This way it looks nice and even when we flip it right sides out and all of our seams are aligning. So make sure you use as many pins or clips as you need. Once I have that ready, I'm going to sew it into place, and you can see I've done that here, and now I'm just going to trim off that seam allowance. Once you're done trimming off the seam allowance, we are going to flip this right sides out, and we have what's starting to kind of look like a top. I'm going to press this so it looks nice, and then I'm going to add a top stitch. If you don't want a top stitch on your garment, you can also do an understitch, but I'm going to go ahead and sew a top stitch onto this. Once I've done that, we are going to move on to our zipper. You are going to need a separating zipper for this top. You can see I have that here. And when we place this, you're going to want to leave a little bit of room at the bottom of your top because we want to make sure that we have enough room for that bias tape finish that we still have to finish off for the bottom. But you can see I've taken my zipper and unzipped it, put it on its respecting sides. I'm going to take one side and flipping it so that the teeth are facing away from the center back. And I'm going to pin this into place, and I am only pinning my main fabric. So I have not attached the lining just yet. Once this is all pinned down, I'm going to sew that on with a zipper foot on my sewing machine, and I'm going to repeat for the other side, making sure those are aligned before I pin everything down because you want to make sure your top is even on both sides of your zipper. And again, I'm just pinning this to the main side of the fabric with the teeth facing away from the center back. So now our zipper has been added to our main fabric, and we are going to attach our lining. What we're going to do is we're going to grab that lining, pull it up and over so that it meets our main fabric with right side spacing. And when you do this, the zipper will be sandwiched in between, still with the teeth facing away from the center back. So when we flip this, it'll be all nice and neat. You won't see any of the raw edges, and your teeth will actually be facing the correct way. And I'm going to repeat this for both sides. And then once I'm done, I'm going to take that over to my sewing machine. With my zipper foot still on, I'm going to sew down that lining. And just so you can see, it will look like this strange little fortune cookie thing. I promise when we flip this inside out, it's going to look nice and neat. So here I've already sewn it down. I'm going to flip my zippers out, and you can see I have my zipper concealed in between my main fabric and my lining, and I'm going to test that before I move on to the next part, just to make sure my zipper is looking how I want it to look. Finally, we are going to finish off the bottom. I'm doing a bias tape finish, so you can see here I am making my bias tape with my main fabric, or you can purchase bias tape on its own. You can also just hem this if you would rather do that, but you can see I'm starting off, I am taking my bias tape and I'm taking the end of it, I'm placing these right sides facing, I'm taking the end of it and flipping it around, as you can see I just did there, and then I'm going to pin this. The edges are matching, so the end of my bias tape is matching the end of my top, and again these are right sides facing, and I'm going to sew this down. I also like to use a lot of pins throughout this process so that I know that my bias tape finish is looking nice. So here I have finished. Here's the wrong side of my top, here's the right. I'm going to trim off the seam allowance, and once I have done that, you can see I have done that here. I am going to flip my bias tape to the wrong side with the folded part still folded when we do that. So here I am at the end, flipping those in. There's the folded part, and we're going to flip it one more time and then pin this into place. When you do this method, it won't actually be visible from the front side. It will only be visible on the inside. And again, I use a lot of pins throughout this just to make sure everything is looking nice. You can also press it as you go to make sure that your bias tape finish looks neat, both on the inside and the outside. And once I have that completely pinned, I will sew it into place. Also, I flipped this over so you guys can see on the main fabric side. And again, I'll just repin because I want to make sure everything is looking even and nice, but you cannot see the bias tape from that side. So I will sew this into place. And then once I've done that, I'm going to give it a nice press. And as always, that final press is the very last step, and you have completed your Cassidy top. I hope you enjoy this. Please let me know if you have any questions, and subscribe if you want to see future pattern releases.